Hey there, so in the last video you saw us build the strong back to build the canoe on. Today we're going to be taking a look at putting the chines on and the frames in place. First thing that I had to do was take all of the frames and make sure that the slots were wide enough so that a chine would fit in. And how I did that was pretty easy. I just took a scrap piece of wood the same size as the stringers and test fitted them into each one of the notches. Anywhere that needed to be fixed, I simply sanded or filed down enough that it would fit nicely. First I put the top chines in place and then kind of tied them together to keep them in place where they needed to be. And then I went ahead and put the rest of the chines in their places, tying them where I needed to and clamping them so that they wouldn't move. And this turned out to be kind of tricky because I had to get inventive with how I held everything together. And the big rubber bands that you see me using here are actually the little rubber piece that comes from the inside of bike tires, which actually worked out pretty good. And then once I got those in place, I put the rest of the frames where they needed to go. Now I found that I was kind of intimidated by the lashing process. However, once I watched a couple of YouTube videos on it, it is very simple. However, it is very, very repetitive. So you're probably going to want to take a break every now and then and let your fingers do something else. Speaking of your fingers, you're definitely going to want to get some tape or something to tape around your fingers once you start realizing where that lashing is going to start rubbing, because it does tend to hurt after a while. Most of the lashing process went pretty simply. However, this one here was one of the more difficult ones due to the twist that was needed in the chine itself. I ended up using this clamp and a little piece of scrap wood to really set that chine into its place rather than trying to pull it into place just using the lashing itself. Now, one thing that I did have an issue with was actually figuring out the right angle to cut the longitudinals at, because I just had a really hard time figuring it out. And then my dad suggested to take a scrap piece of wood and mess around with that before I actually cut the real thing. That way then I could just trace on what I actually needed, the angle that I needed and everything, to be able to attach it correctly to the stems. And that worked out really, really well and made things go a lot quicker. I actually didn't connect anything to the stems for about 3 or 4 days because I was trying to figure out how to do it correctly after my first screw up. And then it came to connecting the ends of the chines to the stem. And what I ended up doing for most of the places was I drilled a couple of holes all the way through both chines and the stem, and I glued a dowel rod in. Once that was all on, I was able to take a t-shirt and kind of see how I wanted the lines to look. And by stretching a t-shirt over it, I was able to figure out what portions of the chines were sticking out too far and that I wanted to streamline, and that made it a lot easier to figure out what it was going to look like once the canoe is finished. Thanks for watching this build video. If you like this one, make sure to stay tuned when we take a look at installing the in walls and gun walls of this canoe. Also, don't forget to hit that subscribe and bell button so that you know when I do end up putting out a video. Once again, thanks for watching.